Hello, thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to discuss a bit about the Duratex roller grade application. Of course, we're going to be using a roller. We'll be using either a 9-inch, we could use a 4-inch, and for these 4-inchers, by the way, we sell the refills. It's a two-pack for refills. We could even use a little 3-inch roller if we were just doing some touch-ups or say a real small cab. And we can use a brush if we needed to get in crevices or cutouts or speaker openings. So these are the basic tools that we can use today and that you would use. We've taken this cab mock-up, done a little bit of repair work. In prior video you've seen how we do that, and that we used vinyl spackle, or you can use gypsum wallboard mud, drywall mud if you will. It goes on easy with a putty knife. It's fun stuff to work with because it dries so quick, it dries hard, it sticks well, the Duratex sticks to it, and it sands like a dream. So, before we get started, what we're going to want to do is get some tools together. We've got our roller, paper towels of course, we've got our Duratex, and I like to keep a little bucket with some water in it nearby because you might need it. If you get it on your hands or something like that, it's easy to get off, or if you spill or get it somewhere you don't want it, you can wipe it off. Now if you get it on clothes, forget about it. It's another deal. I've ruined shirts, I've ruined pants and shoes. So if you're going to be doing some Duratex roller or spraying, best to use some clothes that you're not going to wear to church Sunday. Okay, let's get started. First what we're going to do is take a roller and, well, before we do that, we're going to go ahead and give it a quick sanding just to make sure everything is smooth. And that's about how easy this spackle sands off. Just tack rag it off, and that's about all there is to it. It sands so nice, and this is a real coarse sanding sponge that I use. I'm not the very best applicator of Duratex, but this is a great tool. You'll like it. Give it a try. Okay, so now we have our roller, we have our Duratex, and what we're going to do is we're going to dip the roller in the Duratex. Don't use a typical paint roller pan like if you're going to paint your kitchen or bathroom or something. All that does is it exposes a lot of product to the air, which means it's going to dry. You can get chunks and bits and things like that. So I like just taking, even with the 9-inch roller, I just take and dip the roller in there, load it, and go ahead and, get the product on the cab. A few dips for one this size is about right. So spread it out a little till you get an idea how much you need. All right, a little bit more. That should be enough. And then set the lid back on the bucket, and that way it won't dry out. Especially in the wintertime, when you're working in a heated basement or something like that, the humidity gets real low, and it can dry very quickly, both on the cab and in the bucket if you don't have a lid on it. Okay, now all I'm doing is just kind of positioning the Duratex on the cab. Takes a little bit of pressure on the roller just to force it in and get rid of all the little voids. You can see them pretty clearly. I mean, if you miss a spot, you'll notice it real quick when you're putting on the Duratex. All right? So I'm just getting it evenly applied and trying not to get my shirt sleeve in it. Lost more shirt sleeves like that. But basically, I'm just watching it to see where is it a little bit heavy, where is it that I could spread it out, and it looks pretty good. Now, important trick, just like painting on the wall in your house, kind of get the excess Duratex off the edges and the ends so that when we do our finishing, it doesn't leave any lines and telltale marks. Okay, that's it's positioned. It's ready to go. Now we do the finishing. Now, let me say this. This is your first coat. If these speaker boxes are going to be sitting on a shelf in your family room, then one heavy coat is probably just right. If you're going to be doing mobile DJ speakers and things like that, where you're transporting, I really suggest 2 coats. Let your first coat be your heavy protective coat, and then put another coat on where you can tweak the texture, give a little more build, a little more protection. Duratex is tough, but we're not putting a lot of product on there, and that's one of the beauties of Duratex. You can get a great texture without having to spend a lot of money and without having to put on a huge layer. Okay, now the finishing part is really simple. I was putting a little bit of pressure on the roller, not a lot, but a little bit, just to make sure I had a good even finish. Right? Now I want to address the corners because I may have pushed a little excess material out over the edge. So simple enough, put your roller on an angle and very lightly just run it down the edge. Okay? Very lightly run it down the edge. Very little pressure. And that will take and blend it over onto the side of the cab just a little bit, if you notice. Okay? And that way you're not leaving any gobs running over. Okay? Now the easy part, and the fun part, I'm going to hold almost no pressure on this roller. Alright? I'm going to just hold it with a couple fingers, and all I'm going to do is just allow the roller to roll evenly across the surface under its own weight, all in one direction. Now, be careful when you land that you land straight, not crooked, because that if you land crooked, it can take and push the product a little bit and create a little scuff mark. Very light pressure, finishing off, okay? You can eyeball it. Look at it from a few different angles just to make sure that you've got the consistency you're looking for. Look at your edges. You need to run the edges a little bit. Okay. Looks pretty good. Alright, that's how easy it is to apply Duratex. Now, a little hint that some guys are using, when you have a cutout for your cab, alright, that will, and you don't have your speaker mounted, typically you're going to mount your speaker after the cab is coated. But you go ahead and paint that face of the cab that's got your cutout in it. Alright? You use your brush and you just dab it. You can stipple and create almost an exact copy of this texture with your paintbrush on the inside cutout. So you get this side done. Then you can stack up a few buckets or something else that's a similar diameter, just a little smaller. You can tip that cab upside down so that the buckets or the stand that you make rests on the bottom of the cab, flipped over, and now you can proceed to do the other 5 sides, and you don't have to do, leave one side undone and then come back the next day or something to work on it. So just a little trick. I'm going to zoom this in and show you what this texture looks like, give you a good close-up of it. Okay, you notice the texture that we created with the roller. This is zoomed in pretty tight, so it's going to be tough to see real clearly. But you get a real pleasant, even, spackly looking texture, and it just it's tough, and it's beautiful, and it's easy to do with the roller. Okay, so there you see how easy it is to create a beautiful texture using the Duratex roller grade material and a foam roller, the textured foam roller. The important thing to do now is allow this to dry. If you're up north in wintertime and cool temperatures, make sure you've got at least 65 degrees of temperature surrounding this. Don't put a fan on it because that just drops the temperature really rapidly. It needs a little bit of warmth in order to cure up the best. It's going to take a few days for it to reach its maximum strength, but it's going to dry pretty quickly. Once it's dry, you'll come back and then you can look at it real critically and look for any voids, any thin spots. It's almost impossible not to have some. And that's why we recommend always 2 coats, unless you got a real heavy first coat. This was just a this was just a moderate first coat. This was not what I'd call a heavy first coat that we put on here. And it's going to shrink a little bit when it dries, but you'll still have a beautiful texture. Look for the voids. Put a second coat on. You're going to use a lot less material on your second coat, and it'll go quick. But now all that's left to do is to take the paint roller. You can wash these out and use them, I mean, over and over and over again. So, but realize if you do use a 4-incher, we have refills available that it's really inexpensive way to apply the product. The only thing I wanted to notice too is notice I have some cardboard sitting on the table. This is Mama's dining room table, so I didn't want to make a mess. So you guys know that it doesn't smell bad. She won't know when she comes home that you've been working on this stuff in the living room. But better to have a good construction area where you can work on this and not risk any spills. Thanks for stopping by. Visit us at acrytech.com. That's ACRYTECH.com. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. My name is Dan, and it's at sales@acrytech.com. I appreciate you stopping by. Thanks.
Hi, this is Jack from Advanced Sound and Lighting. Every couple of years I like to take the cabinets, clean them up, sand them down, and put a nice finish on them. And a friend lately told me about the Duratex product. And I'm going to give the Duratex product a try this time instead of just coating them with a heavy industrial paint. Pretty much we just start with sanding the cabinet down, cleaning it. I like to use Bondo. Bondo seems to give a nice hard finish. It's a little more difficult to work with, but we're going to give it a try with that. Alright, we've got our cabinet sanded down and prepped, and kind of like rule of thumb that is, you run your hand across them and you can feel, if you can feel an imperfection, you're probably going to see it. Now, the coating itself does fill in some small creases, but the better you get your product and the smoother you can make it and the less imperfections that you can feel in it are definitely better. So we blow them off, we've got them ready to take inside, and what I've done is I'm going to take a wet rag, lightly damp rag, and wipe them down to get all the dust off, and then we'll coat them. Alright, we've wiped our cabinets down and we are ready. We've got a 9-inch roller and a little 2-inch roller. The 2-inch will be for the trims around the area you can't get, and of course the 9-inch will be our main tool. I'll be able to show you what we're doing right now. Alright, this is the Duratex roller coat. And this is going to be our first coat, and we're going to do it straight. You dip the roller down into your material and get yourself a nice coat. One. This is probably more than enough for the top. Try to keep the lid back on as much as possible so it doesn't dry out. And try to get an even coat across the whole thing. And this will take a little more time on your very first start up of getting the roller saturated. Once you get the roller saturated, it goes a lot better. It's taking me a little bit of time here to get the coat even now. And this is straight product. I did not thin it on the first coat. Try to make sure you get all runs. Make sure you don't have any runs anywhere. And once it looks like you have an even coat, then put your texture coat on. And then your texture coat is what I'm going to start right now. I'm going to start at the front. And I'll pull a nice even texture coat with not a lot of pressure like you used on the application. You don't want to see your roller marks at all come completely off. And that's going to be your first coat. And you just continue with all 5 sides. And that'll be it for the first coat. And there we've got a nice even coat for our first coat on the whole cabinet. Big difference. And you may ask why the painter's tape on the corners. When I take my corners off, sometimes that corner kind of is molded to that same corner. So I'll put a number on the corner, on both corners, so I put the exact same corner exactly back where it should be. Now we'll do the next one. Alright, here we go with our second cabinet. Once again, get our product on there. Probably going to be enough. Keeping that lid on there so it doesn't dry out. Get it evened out. I use a good bit of pressure to try to get the roller, but if you don't want to use a pan, if you use a roller pan, it's going to dry out too quick. Much off your roller as you can, so you're not leaving any lines. Okay, we've got our even coat on there. Now we'll put our texture coat on. Texture coat, a little lighter than normal. And I find sometimes you have to do it a couple times light to get it to actually start coming out even. This is really a nice product to work with. I've coated my cabinets with many things, from bed liner material to something called rocker and Schultz, which is what you put on the rocker panels of your car, especially your sports cars. You'll see the rocker panels, and that's a spray on, and then coat it with a heavy industrial paint. But this is a very nice coating. Put it right up with vinyl anytime. And the positive with this compared to vinyl is if you bang this up, you're not going to repair vinyl very easily. This is a very easy repair. And there's my texture coat on the top. Now, if these cabinets have dried with the first coat, I'm going to take about 120 grit sandpaper. I'm just going to rough enough to take off that top rough edge. Not a whole lot, but just take the edge off of it, and then we're going to want to wipe it down. Alright, we got our cabinet sanded down, and the mess cleaned up and wiped off, and now what we're going to do for our final coat, to make the coat real smooth, is I'm going to add 4 ounces to a half a gallon, and that's going to make it have a very, very nice smooth finish. And this will be the finish I want to take my most time on, to make sure that every imperfection is covered and it's a nice even final coat. So just stir all that right in there. Alright, we're going to put our final top coat on this one. Try to get a nice even coat before we work on the finish. A little low in the bucket because I've already coated the other cabinet, so I have to make a few more dips than normal. Try to keep product closed up as much as possible. See how we have enough to get a nice even coat on there. Now this will be about 6 of these cabinets that I've done so far, and I'll show you with a zoom in. And there should be some pictures also you should be able to find that will show you what this finish is. It's a little different than what comes right out of the bucket. It's a little smoother. And I like it a little smoother for a couple reasons. When you go to wipe the cabinets down, of course if your cabinets are sitting anywhere where they're able to get any dust, it's a lot easier to take a cloth and wipe the cabinet down. When it's kind of coarse or porous, whichever one you want on top there, It's a little hard to get the dirt out. It takes you about twice as much time, but if you give it a smooth finish, it's a lot easier. Alright, I think I have a nice even coat on here now. Once again, get all your excess out of your roller before you start this. This way you don't have too much. I like to take my corners. Well, I want a nice coating on them corners because they're going to take a lot of abuse. Of course, I have metal corners that go on there over the edges, I should say. Not corners, but edges. The corners do get metal corners put back on. Alright, I'm going to start easily and roll right on and roll right off. Stand back with the light at a couple angles and make sure you don't have any imperfections. I have one that I don't like, so I'm going to do it one more time. Light pressure on this final. Very light pressure with the roller. You don't want to mess with it too much because it is drying. Once it starts to set up, you'll make your product be a little rougher than what you want. Right now we want it to dry, and as it dries, the air bubbles that I'm creating now will become smooth. There we go. Don't have any lines, don't have any imperfections. That looks nice. Okay. Turned out real nice. And video is probably going to be hard. I'll take some regular pictures and show you. That's a nice smooth coating, and thinning that out really makes it nice. I'm finding about 4 ounces of water to 1/2 gallon. But those cabinets turned out real nice. This set of cabinets are about 6 months old. And this set of cabinets are about 24 years old. I know because I built them. I've got some sets that are in between. And with not a whole lot of work, you can't tell the difference between any of them. They turned out real nice. Good luck with your project. I highly recommend this product. Alright, we got our first coat on there. And now we're going to sand them down with 120 grit. That's what we started to do here on this one. This one's sanded completely down after its first coat. You don't sand it all off. You just kind of scuff it up and make it smooth. It's kind of hard to tell with the video, but it's a nice flat smooth coat. And we're going to take and vacuum everything off, wipe it down with a wet cloth, make sure we got all of the ground off material gone, and then we're going to put our final coat on there. And once again, we're going to dilute it with 1/2 gallon with about 4 ounces of water, and that seems to give it a real nice smooth finish. And you should be able to see some photos that will be posted also. Okay, we got the final coat on these. They definitely turned out well. They look good. This is nice product to work with. I highly recommend that you use their rollers. That gives you the texture exactly that you want. Very, very good product. And it works very, very, very well. Now I've got a trailer outside here. And that's where I've been putting the base bends and the cabinets when I get done. And the heat during the day probably gets up to about 130, 140 inside the trailer. And that gives you a nice baked on finish. So I hope yours turn out as well as mine. I'm very, very happy with this product.